welcome to your weekly call. Lee Honish, David Bartels, bringing you real estate trends. And David, how are you this week?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much. How about you?
Excellent. I'm doing very well. Enjoying another lovely day in San Diego. I know why people move here.
It's a frigid 50 degrees here.
It's not. It's actually going to be about 70 degrees here. It's actually very warm and pleasant. It started off cold, but it's really, really nice today down here. Maybe I'll go over to Balboa Park later on. It's just a couple of blocks away. So I bring all that up. Let's rewind to about a week ago. So a week ago, we did our last broadcast talking about the election and the impact that that would have. I think the biggest and most notable thing to bring up about that particular episode that I've noticed is that I added a poll to it for people to chime in about how they felt about it. And overwhelmingly, 80% of the people who voted saying that real estate would be affected by the election. And so let's start right there. Are you surprised that people feel that there's going to be some kind of impact based on the election?
Well, I am surprised a little bit, except at the idea that the impact is going to come from another stimulus plan. So because I think that a Biden presidency increases the likelihood of some sort of stimulus, as opposed to the stalemate, could be good for housing. But what we don't know is what they're going to use the money for. So are they going to use them? Are they going to give it to lenders? Are they going to give it to renters? Are they going to give it to landlords? Are they going to give it to homeowners? Maybe no one. We don't know what they're going to do with it. So it's really hard to say. And the policies in place that keep interest rates low are going to remain in effect, though we have seen interest rates tick up about 10, 12 basis points over the last week or so, but everything seems to be really pretty stable, and I'm not sure that it's going to have much of an impact. The other thing that I did read about is that it sounded like the Biden team was going to try to reinstate the mortgage interest deduction, which would be really good for housing too. But we haven't really seen much of that. We have seen a pullback in mortgage refinancing, mortgage applications, and that is probably has more to do with the big rush that they had, and the exuberance for refinancing has pulled back, even though the numbers are still well higher month over month, from the previous year.
So in general, and the reason I bring this up, this is much like the general public. Like, people believe in a cause and effect by elections. People believe in cause and effect by the stock market. People believe in a cause and effect of the Fed, when in fact housing is still at one of its most stable moments historically. I think because we've lived through the 2007 crash, people are overly concerned with the future of real estate. Like, it can't sustain itself. What would you say to real estate agents that have a fear of a market collapse?
Well, I don't think there's any evidence of a market collapse. The signs, of market strength or weakness are really favor strength. We had a crash in 2008, right? Everyone's probably well aware of that. But the factors that contributed to that are nowhere really to be seen. You have an oversupply of housing, that was driven by people who were over leveraged, found themselves in foreclosure, weren't able to make their payments. And today, you have limited supply, so we have a shortage of inventory. We've got low interest rates. We've got lots of equity in houses, and why foreclosure rates are, the highest they've been since, 2008 probably. It doesn't look like that's necessarily going to translate into a lot of foreclosures, but it does look like it's going to translate into a lot of sales as people try to get their equity out of their house, as opposed to losing it to foreclosure. And then you're going to have a lot of these mom and pop landlords who have been really beaten up pretty good by people taking advantage of COVID and not paying rent. So we're looking at those landlords who, as soon as they're allowed to, they're going to sell their houses. They're going to just throw their hands up in disgust and say, I don't want any more of this. This is way too much risk, way too much headache for me. I've taken all I can take, and they're going to just put the house on the market and move on. So I think that those are a couple of multiple factors that are going to lead to a big housing boom. I wouldn't be surprised if we had the biggest year for real estate that we've ever had in 2021. And none of that that is not because Biden's president versus Trump. I think that was setting up regardless of who the president was.
Well, that takes us to that takes us ultimately to a supply and demand issue, right? So the one thing we can all agree on is the number of COVID cases going up. The number of people being allowed into the general public will generally go down. I know here in San Diego, we just moved to the purple tier, right? So they're going to start closing bars and start doing systematic shutdowns, at least in San Diego County. A lot of that has to do with us being a vacation destination, but it also affects, this time of year is usually a little accelerated for real estate, right? Because the weather is so nice. Compared to the rest of the country, we enjoy actual ridiculously nice weather here in San Diego. So let's talk about it from a real estate agent perspective. We're still talking, what was the stat, David? 1 in 90 people has a real estate license in California. Some
95. That
95,
might be higher
right?
now, but yeah.
Maybe. But talking about it from that perspective, if I was an agent who wasn't cultivating my list, we keep going over this repeatedly, but I'm not cultivating my list. I'm not keeping up with my clients. And now I'm entering yet again another period where I'm going to be restricted on going out into the public, where people have general fears, where, if you're not savvy to Zoom or to a webinar or any of the online techniques, for the foreseeable future, based on the number of COVID cases, from a trend standpoint as a real estate agent, I would believe that there has to be a lot of fear going forward from right now.
For real estate agents, fear? Well, I think that's standard. most real estate agents are in fear, and they roam from one deal to another. Wondering, oh my gosh, I closed one, now what? And are afraid they're going to go weeks or months without another transaction. And so I think that there's a lot to say about that. The whole world, not just real estate agents, really suffer from anxiety. They really struggle living with unresolved circumstances, and they just can't be okay with being okay. And then there's the attitude that people owe them something. So this entitlement that well, you're my friend, and if you do a transaction, you're going to do business with me. And most people don't approach the real estate business as a business. It's more of a avocation than a vocation. And I think that if people treated it more like a business, a sales business, and really focus on building their business and this is the one thing that I preach more than anything to my sales team, is keeping their foot on the gas, never letting up. There are no brakes in the race. There are no brakes. And when everyone else is taking a break, that's when we hit the gas harder, because those are the periods where you pick up market share. So yeah, there are lots of reasons for people to be in fear and have anxiety, but probably none of those reasons have anything to do with the economy and the presidency and all those. Those are internal demons that they've got to fight off. And the people who are busy are also the same ones that are productive. And when you're productive, you replace fear with confidence. And confidence is really what you need to build a business. And And in my mind pops the saying, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and we've talked about this over the last couple of weeks, and some of our most popular videos over the last couple of weeks are getting people out of the mindset, not letting your subconscious control your day-to-day activities, going outside of yourself, which kind of leads into
your audio
today's
needs
topic.
adjustment.
Does it? It
Yeah, you're
does.
blurry.
Is that better? I should be okay.
No, maybe it's just me.
It might
So
be you.
we can get feedback
For those
from the group.
because I can hear you. Can you hear both of us well? I'm waiting to see if anybody responds. It might be you. I don't think it's me.
Okay.
I can go to.
Victoria says she can hear us fine. So maybe it's
Okay.
just me.
All right, let's move forward. So that takes us to our topic, right? Our topic this week, we've been trying to do positive things to help you build your business as we go into the end of the year. And today we're talking about, there are two different terminologies. There's OKRs, which are objective with key results, and then there's SMART goals. And I'd rather do SMART goals and then apply it to things people can understand. For those of you who don't know, SMART is a acronym. Did I get that right, David? It's an acronym. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. So we're going to do this on a 1 week basis. I'm actually going to do it along with everybody who's listening. We're actually going to use Everhome as my landing point, and I can see how many people I drive to it with whatever selective messages I do. So my specific, let's talk about specific. Make your goals as focused and identifiable. Like, it needs to be clear and focused. When you're talking about specific goals, your goals run the risk of being too vague in general. I just know this for me when it comes to work or creating a website or creating anything for anybody on a marketing point, having a clear, specific message. So let's first talk about what I'm going to do, and let's talk about what agents can do for themselves. What is a very specific message based on the market right now, David, that agents can use in social media to obtain, let's just start with the simple, clicks? I mean, that's the terminology we all know. Something that will, what is a very simple, specific goal for someone in a week?
Well, in terms of number of clicks, you mean?
Yeah. Let's start with initial clicks before we actually start moving it around the food chain.
Well, I don't manage clicks, and maybe I should be, managing clicks in a week. I'm managing more of the activity side of things. But clicks can, I can tell you this about clicks is that they can, they're kind of like likes, right? They don't necessarily mean something. So it depends on what your objective is. So if your objective is to make brand impressions, then you really can't measure success in clicks as much. I mean, it's an indicator of success. If you're looking for engagements, then you want clicks. And then, clicks could be in the form of likes, or clicks could be in the form of going to a landing page and, and signing them up. Clicks could really come in a number of ways. So I don't know a precise number that you want to do it, and a lot of that is also driven by the budget that you're doing, and maybe you've got some more insight into.
I do. So let's talk about a specific goal. So let's use Everhome as the example. My goal would be to create brand awareness, right? And that's impression. People get this wrong about social media all the time. If your video's playing when somebody scrolls through and they see your website or your business name, you're creating brand awareness. What I want is the name to be out there. And to do that, you need engaging content, right? So everybody, and I mean everybody, gets this wrong. When it says, especially on Facebook, because it does have the tools for it, and I recommend that you have a business page when you do it, when it says impressions, that means it showed up in timelines. Doesn't mean that somebody stopped for 3 seconds. It doesn't mean somebody watched the video. Doesn't mean somebody looked at it. It scrolled by that many people. And if you're doing brand awareness, especially when I work with clients, David, especially even doing this content and getting it out there and getting the Everhome name out there, I'm happier when I see that it's showed up in 2,000 or 3,000 news feeds. Now, it's fantastic that 1,000 people stopped and watched us and listened to our message, but I can't count on that, right? I only have a 3-second methodology that I have to keep in mind, and that's not the correct word. I only have 3 seconds to capture the attention of anybody who watches this
3-second
particular
attention span.
Yeah,
Right.
right. 3-second attention span.
Impression.
So what can I do in that 3 seconds? I can make sure that, much like those of you watching this video, you'll see that this show's presented by Everhome. I've created the brand awareness. I've also put our names. Our names are now branded. Those are the things I can do. And the one thing I see with real estate agents is they get so overwhelmed by, well, I don't have content. I don't have anything to put up. That's fascinating to me. And I'm sure that you think, I've seen this with a friend recently, David, where they bought a service and it's just putting up, hey, oil your doorknobs, or oil your squeaky latches, and here's my information attached to that little piece. And so when I'm creating a specific goal, right? Was your goal to get the name out there, or for it to show up in the feed? Like, I first of all, based on your experience with your agents, do they have any concept of how social media or the internet really works? Let's start right there.
Well, I think people think they understand how it works. And the reason I say that is because I thought I understood how it works for a long time. And I still don't really understand, some of the nuances, and I rely on experts like you to to really help us, figure that messaging out. And I know we spend a lot of time talking about what it is we want to communicate. And then we start with how we're going to communicate it. And I think a lot of people are focused on just communicating anything. And, and the first place they think about doing it is social media. And they think of it as a platform, as a free platform, in order to build on a message, which is all well and good if you only want to get your message out in front of people who you already have a relationship with, at least a social media type relationship with. As as I look at my 5,000 friends, and I've contemplated recently, how many of them do I really know that have I really had a conversation with? And it's probably under a couple hundred.
Right.
Of the 5,000, people that, or I want to say I like to think they pay attention to my page, but, the way that the algorithm is they may not have seen my page, since they signed up, to like it or follow it or whatever it is they did. Because you got to post content that they click on to get that kind of content, in the feed again and again. So I think that the fallacy, they think they understand it as a way to get the message out. And so they misunderstand it for that way. That's one way to communicate to your friends, but the way that you build a brand, you really have to go the paid route, and you really have to think about who your target audience is, how you're going to get your message in front of that target audience, and give some thought to right message, right time, right person.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. When that's with in the budget of the person, and I think they get obsessed with hearing crazy numbers, because there are a lot of people out there when it comes to social media blasting and advertising, where you will get caught up and they will just basically drain your pockets and not really provide much of anything for you, when you would have been better served just creating a good piece of content or a photo of a listing or anything that would have produced better for you than having spent money. And it's tough. I completely feel for real estate people out there, especially when trying to get a message out there. So I'm going to run these exercises with Everhome and then show the results. And I'm going to use 3 different approach. I'm going to show something in regards to a discounted format, right? Listing their own home, finding an article related to that. Something probably related to COVID. And I'm telling this to everybody, I don't intend to create this content. I'm going to find articles and make the articles the drip line. I'm going to use a lead page, right? For me, it's how many clicks can I get onto the final website? Maybe you could talk about this. How crucial is it to have a website that's going to drop cookies and follow the client? I mean, if I can get the clicks onto the website of people that are remotely interested in these messages, now it's up to good website creation, right? For it to do its part of the job. So talk about the website for a little bit here, David.
Well, I think that, listen, pixels and cookies and, all that jargon, which is pretty confusing even for me sometimes. That is all well and good if you're planning to do retargeting. If you don't care about who's going to your website and you just want, take blind faith, then it doesn't matter. But if you are really thinking about marketing from the perspective of a campaign, what pixels and cookies do is they allow you to create, what I'm making up a term right now, maybe, is an invisible funnel. Basically, you want, when people engage with you, they have a much higher probability of re-engaging with you. But if they click on something that you post and go to your website, it doesn't mean that they're hot, but it certainly makes them interested. And what they basically communicate to you is that they're at least interested in a particular topic. And if you can figure out who those people are, and a lot of that information is really anonymous. There's a shield between you and the customer. So while they've been there, okay, you're not necessarily going to know who they are unless they're also in your database and you've got that done. So at one level, what the pixel and cookie allows you to do is if you sync it with your database, and I use Follow Up Boss. If you sync with that, if somebody goes to my website, I know if they've gone to my website. I know if they're looking at properties. I can even see what properties that they're looking at, and that gives me some insight so that I can better communicate with them. So yes, if you have a pixel, if you're putting pixels on the website and you're integrated with your CRM, you'll know when your clients are going to the website, and you'll know it might be appropriate for you to follow up with them. It probably is appropriate. The next level of that is anonymous people. So you create an ad somewhere, a pay per click or a blog post, and they go to your website and they're not in your database. So you're able to identify people who have been there. You just don't know who they are. And then you use a technique we call retargeting, which is kind of like you go on Amazon to search for a product, and that product all of a sudden, and the competitive products start showing up in your timeline all of a sudden. Pair of shoes that you looked at Nordstrom's follows you around the web for a couple of weeks, baiting you to click on it again and reconsider it. So that's what pixels and cookies can do at a finer level. And then once you identify, if you create enough of a pattern, then you can create what we call lookalike audiences. And then you can create a campaign and tell Facebook and say, hey, this is what my audience looks like. This is the demographics of the person who's coming. I want to create a similar audience to this, and I want to get my message in front of them. So those are, 2-3 different levels of how you can use them. So the answer is yes, by all means, we should be using cookies and pixels and retargeting and CRM. That's all integrated in order to build a campaign and to get people to come back again and again and again until you can engage them.
And that's what we're talking about here, right? So once you have a specific message, that's what you should be putting on websites. I think people get caught up on, oh, I have a corporate website with my company and that's my website. That's good for them. That's not good for you. Your investment should be in a very solid website that does do retargeting and refocusing, that puts out your message. And once I know what the message is, I'm telling you this as a marketer, now I can create a measurable response, right? How long will it take me to complete? I don't expect people, as a private business owner, everybody out there who's a real estate agent, you should be dedicating a good portion of your day to doing marketing for you. In this exercise that we're going to be doing, and I'll have results for everybody, and I'll also post them as well. There is in 1 week, I'm not going to put crazy time into this. I'll put an hour or two per day into this just to prove a point of how many people can I drive at David's site. It doesn't make a difference to me what they do once they get there. I have to believe that my capture on the other end works. So my job as a marketer is to push the traffic there based on a message that's congruent. Just getting traffic for the sake of traffic, don't get caught up in that. That's not accurate. But do it in short-term goals. And I mean this as a coach and as a mentor to a lot of people. Do a short-term goal. Don't get caught up in, oh, I need thousands of people on my website. I know this, and tell me if I'm wrong, David. You would be very happy if I created the correct message based on what's on the website and got 100 people onto the website in 7 days.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's what everybody should be shooting for. And I'm telling you, I'm not going to spend more than an hour or 2 hours chasing that message, which means attainable. Now I've created something that works, right? I've invested into my website. And if you can't get a squeeze page, do something, right? Make sure your logo's blaring in their face. It's measurable. I'm only spending a week. Now it's obtainable, right? This isn't a crazy number. 100 people going to that website is not a crazy number. When you buy traffic, that's not a crazy number, especially if you're targeting it, right? But I'm going to get to the R in SMART, which is the biggest deal. Relevant. It's got to be relevant. It's got to be congruent to you. If you're suddenly going to go into the business of being an advocate, then you better have a lot of stuff about being an advocate. Like people will click around on your website. They will dig deeply. I've actually run this when we were doing this maybe a year or so ago, David. We ran sort of this experiment, but I ran it off my marketing page looking for homeowners, and I got lots of clicks and lots of engagements. But they looked at it and realized I was a marketer, so I wasn't capturing. So it wasn't congruent. It wasn't relevant. It didn't fit my goals, and the people that were interested in buying or selling could see right through it. So when I'm driving traffic back to Everhome, right? What is my relevant, very specific, very obtainable goal going to be? Is it people that are frustrated with paying higher prices? Is it, what is the most congruent message for you right now?
Well, I can tell you the message we're trying to get out, and it's more of what our target is versus the message. We're going through multiple ideas for messaging to do this. The target audience is a seller or potential seller who has not yet listed either for sale by owner or listed with agent. And we've been going back and forth and try to figure out what that looks like. So, and I think maybe this is a good conversation to have here to give some people some insight into how you create a marketing idea. So, and I'll share with you a couple of ways that a couple of ideas that we're thinking about. So if we want to get to somebody who's likely to list their house but hasn't yet listed, either for sale by owner or with an agent, you've got to figure out what the messaging looks like in order to get there. So what is something that they would look for? So you could do what we call conquest ads. So I can say I want everybody who searches for Help You Sell or Keller Williams or Berkshire Hathaway, okay, that I want them to see a paid ad. That might be one way, and they click that ad and then they go to a landing page or a website that we want them to go to. That's one way. Is then you've got keyword searches. So maybe they Google for sale by owner or sell my house myself, or how do I sell a house, and so that might be somebody who's indicating that they're interested, and then you drive them to a message that's congruent with the ad or to a page. Then there might be somebody who's searching a keyword, say discount, discount brokers, save money on selling my house. How do I sell my house for free? Whatever those key phrases are that the marketing team is figuring out right now. So those would be examples of pay per click ads. that's more complicated on Facebook, because what you can't do on Facebook is you can't really narrow your demographic. There's no, they have hundreds of pieces of demographic data, like age and income and where they live and those kind of things. But the new advertising policies on Facebook don't allow you to target them because of fair housing. They feel like, I can't even, I know that real estate ads are clicked on much more often by females than males. So if I wanted to do a really targeted ad and I wanted to address it to females, I couldn't put a gender specific ad together and send it directly to females. It has nothing to do with demographics. It has to do with getting your message in front of the right audience, and then adapting a message so that it speaks directly to women, because the message that I might make to a woman might be different than I might make to a man. For instance, a female is likely going to respond better to messages that engage them emotionally, like safety and security and raising their family and schooling and that kind of thing. And men are going to respond to messages that are going to be more logical. So, they're going to be looking for things like value and, commute times, and your wife's going to be happy, those kind of things, payments. That's what, and those messages aren't really allowed. And so we're trying to come up with some different messages. And one of the things that we're thinking about is if they're clicking on iBuyers, or if they're searching for iBuyer options, well, we think that might be an opportunity for us, if that's somebody who's looking for an alternative to traditional real estate, and that's our target. And so we're thinking about, how do we get our messaging in front of potential home sellers that are interested in at least exploring the iBuyer option today. So this give you an idea of the thought process that goes through it, and what the limitations of creating that messaging are and aren't. You can be a lot more specific if you do a Google pay-per-click than you can be if you do Facebook, because of the demographic restrictions. But the idea of developing messaging and getting in front of the right audience is really how you go about it.
And lastly, time bound. So we're doing this exercise for 1 week. Yes.
Are you muted?
Yeah, no. No. Hi, David. We're gonna.
There you go.
I know I'm
it
not.
Must be me.
It must be you.
Yeah.
All right. So, and lastly, it's time bound, right? So we're gonna do this experiment for 1 week. I'm gonna take the information that gave me. Let's say David's my client who just hired me. Said, Lee, these are the goals I want to achieve.
I am your client, and I did just hire you.
Yeah, I know. Speaking out loud. As the brand ambassador, so my specific goal, and I'm going to tell you how I'm going to cheat the system, and I'm going to share that. That's why you guys should have stayed on the video this long. And for those of you on the coaching call, we'll take a couple of questions real quick about how I'm going to do this. The specific thing is, I'm going to use FSBO groups in California, and I'm going to create messages in those groups. It's measurable because I'm going to use a click counter through Google shortcode. So I know how many people clicked on the code that took them over to his website. I'm only shooting for 100 people, which is very attainable. It's going to be a relevant message, which, much like our videos, this is only fed to real estate people. So when I see that 1,000 people watched our video, I know they're real estate people. I don't feed it anywhere else. I have a very specific system for that. And it's time bound. I've got 1 week to get 100 people for my client who hired me, and he did, to do this very specific thing. And it's congruent to me because I am the brand ambassador. I do take it seriously. It's why I try so hard with the videos. It's why we've been creating content that is unique to any coaching program. I want to make this really clear, even when we move forward with additional broadcasts. The goal here is to make you guys better real estate agents, but it's also, here's a little inside baseball. this builds credibility for David. It builds credibility for Everhome. We're creating content. The number one mistake I see out of every agent that I've ever been hired by is them telling me to put together a sales pitch and slime that out there somewhere. And David's learned this. I've learned this. It doesn't work that way. You can't post in groups. You can't really post on Facebook and expect engagement. People want content. And that's all there is to it. There's a reason I specifically do content marketing, why I create podcasts or videos, or even in this case, I'm going to use relevant information to take people out of FSBO groups or to take people out of real estate buyer-seller groups and put them onto the website because they're looking for the information. I'm not a genius. It's just obvious by looking at the groups. If there's 25,000 people in a FSBO group, some of them are agents, yes, but some of them are people trying to list their home. So obviously, if I want to give them a cheap alternative that puts them on the MLS, and that's really the bottom line message here, it makes sense for me to go after it. If I was going after sellers, why wouldn't you target your local area? Use the buy-sell groups, use the classified sections. Was it different when I'm sure you were around for this, David, the infamous Craigslist back page, list a property, drive them to something routine that all of us tried at some point, right? Everybody did it.
People are still trying it.
Right. But for some reason, when it comes to a Yahoo group, everybody tells me, well, it doesn't work. That's because you're not creating content. You're just putting a sales pitch up on a classified ad on the web where you have 3 seconds. Let me get that up there correctly. 3 seconds. That 3 is a big deal. They're going to be more engaged by what you're saying or what you're presenting. I can tell you that. That's an absolute fact. It's a very simple premise when you're creating it. And the website's in place. It works correctly. Do you see anything that we may have missed that might be beneficial for real estate agents this week with creating a SMART goal for the next week?
Ask me that question again. You blanked out.
Did you? Can you think of anything that you'd want to add if you were talking to your own sales team or to the thousands of people?
The thing that I'm preaching to them is the same thing. So, I've got two. I got the marketing team, I got the sales team. So when I'm talking to the marketing team, it's really about making sure we get the right message. And that starts with being very clear about who your audience is. You can't. You're not fishing with a cast net here. It's just and blindly just take. I'm a Florida boy, so sorry about the reference, but when I go out, my grandfather, who was a commercial fisherman, and we'd go out and we'd have to catch our own bait, right? So when I was hanging out with him, and he'd take this big cast net, and we'd go out, and he didn't just look in the water and throw the cast net and see what he was looking for. He would watch for he used to get what mullet is what we got to use as a bait, and we would go where mullet oftentimes were, and then we would wait, and when we saw some signs that there might be some mullet, then we'd throw the net to that area. And that's what you're doing in marketing. You're looking for some sign of interest, and then you're throwing the net in that area because there's a high probability that where there's one, there's more. And that's really what we're trying to do. So you got to start with figure out who are you looking for, okay? Who are you looking for? And then putting your message in front of that person. You can't, if you're going to, people get inspired or you're motivated, and they leave this and they go out and they said, okay, I'm going to do a buyer ad, I'm going to do a seller ad, and then I'm going to post it on my Facebook friends. It's going to have zero impact on your results. All you're going to do is communicate to people that you are, looking for prospects, buyer or seller prospects. And what you really want to do is get outside of that sphere of influence, and you want to identify who your target is, and then get a message that's congruent with their interests in front of them. And that's not enough. Then once you capture them, then you got to drive them somewhere so that you can engage them. And that's not enough, because once you engage them, then you've got to get a body on them and, and call them and email them and text them and try to convert them. So that's why we call it a funnel. that you bring up, at the funnel, at the top of the funnel, it's open and you can pour more stuff in there. That's the signs of the audience that you're trying to get. And as they enter the funnel, it gets more and more finite and a lot more granular in terms of what you're trying to do with them. So it goes from who's your audience to getting a message in front of that audience to get them to engage, and then engaging them in the conversion process. And then they move from passive to active buyers or sellers, and then it turns into an escrow and a close. But it all started with who's your audience and what's your message.
And I can say this as a guy who's studied and taught marketing for a long time. Literally every book, that I've ever read or consumed on the subject of marketing, and not one. The first chapter is identify your audience. The second chapter is always what's your message to that audience. It's that simple. So when you're talking about creating a SMART goal, for everybody to try this week, don't get caught up on I don't have money to pay for my click ads. I don't have money. I'm not going to use any money in this example. There's probably a link above or below. I always like how people can point when they're doing a video and go, below, I'll document this so you guys can see what I'm doing, and I will shoot a couple of short videos. I'm not going to cheat this. This video isn't cheated. It is physically placed because while I do like targeting and do enjoy paying for targeted, I know for a fact, me personally, this is to my control issues, David, that if I physically place this in front of a real estate agent, much like going to SeaWorld, don't hate for going to SeaWorld, when you feed one of those, what are the things with not the fish, but the terrible bat rays. You hold it and you put it right up under their face. Like you literally dangle the food and you put it up underneath them for them to vacuum. And when I'm creating content like this or anything else, I just basically put it in my hand and I stick it up under their face. And that's why I'm telling all of you, I'm not going to use any money to get these 100 people onto the website. Okay. And if he gets a 1% result, I would call that a win, especially at no money spent. And it's created brand awareness. It will be exposed to thousands of people. It's going to be highly targeted. It's going to be congruent to all these messages. And I would challenge everybody to think of what their congruent message is and what message they want to put out and creating that content. Don't get caught up on a sales message. Be consistent with congruency to you, in harmony with you. That's what congruency is about. You can't sell what you're not. I mean, did I get that right? Did that come out right? That'll do it for this week. Anything you'd like to add, David?
Not this week. I appreciate everybody listening.
Thanks, everybody. So click on the link if you want to see how this is done. We'll compare notes next week, and we'll see how many people go to Everhome.